Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Simmin and Chillin. And here we are again with Euro Truck Simulator 2. So, as always on this series, I'm going to be playing this a bit. We'll go for a bit of a drive. We'll have a bit of a chat. Not necessarily about the game that I'm playing. Won't necessarily provide commentary on the trip. It's just an opportunity to just talk about some things. Talk about what I've been up to. Talk about what's been going on. Talk about some interesting things I've been doing that you might want to check out. And so on. My cat is presently trying to get the door open. She will eventually figure out either how to open the door. Wow, she actually has opened the door. Good work, Patty. Anyway, so while we're going for a bit of a drive, we'll talk about some stuff. I'll tell you about some projects I've got going on and all sorts of things, and hopefully all have a lovely time. We are currently in the town of Bayonne in the south of France. I did actually record an episode of this earlier. But for whatever reason the actual video of the game didn't capture, so I basically had to start again, which is a terrible shame because there were some interesting discussions and some very insightful comments that you missed out on, so I'll just have to do my best to recreate those this time around. Right, first things first, let's get us a job to do so we have a drive to proceed with. What have we got? Bayonne to Iwora in Poland for 25,000 euros. That sounds like a job for me. Oh, that's not Poland, is it? That's Portugal. Poland is PL. My mistake. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't been down to the Iberia DLC yet, so this will be brand new. We're heading through Spain and then onwards into Portugal. It should be fun. Alright. Take the job and pick up the cargo, which is probably behind me somewhere. Yep, there it is. Now, compared to last time, you may notice that I've got a new truck. This is my Mercedes truck, which I replaced my rubbish old Iveco one with, because that Iveco one was terrible in so many ways. Like I upgraded the engine and several other bits and pieces of it, and it was still absolute rubbish. So I upgraded to this Mercedes one, which is called, bear with me one sec, is a Mercedes-Benz New Actros Stream Space. And it had, in its base configuration, it had about 100 more horsepower than the Iveco fully upgraded did. So, yeah. So that was a good starting point, and I've upgraded the engine on it as well. At some point I'll upgrade the wheelbase as well, which will make it better for doing sort of particularly large and heavy shipments, but for normal cargo like we're doing here, this is absolutely fine. But yes, this is a reasonably nippy truck in so far as trucks can ever be nippy, but yeah, it's done me proud so far. I'm pretty pleased with it. Right, so let's get on our way. Wait for these guys to pass. Creep out, try not to catch my trailer on the gate as I usually do. We're going over the grass, but we didn't hit the gate. That's something. Alright, exciting. Never been down into Spain and Portugal in this before, so this is a first for me. So hopefully we should have some nice scenery to enjoy along the way. Anyway, plenty of things to talk about. And like I say, I recorded an episode of this earlier. And I was quite pleased that we had so many things to talk about in it, but the fates conspired against me to deprive us all of my wit and wisdom, so I must now attempt to recreate said wit and wisdom for you. And try not to feel artificial about it. Right, where are we going? Round here. So yeah, first thing I wanted to talk about was some stuff I'm doing for work. So, most of you listening to this hopefully know already that I am the editorial manager of ricedigital.co.uk, which is a website devoted to primarily Asian popular culture, video games, anime, manga, VTubers, that sort of thing. Alongside that, a few weeks back we launched a second site called Retrounite.co.uk. Been very excited to get underway with this, but unfortunately this week we suffered a bit of a setback in that the site was a victim of a malware attack that basically destroyed the homepage and was putting the whole site at risk of being blacklisted from Google search results. If you've not come across this kind of attack before, it happens at random rather than being malicious. It's sort of bot led, I believe, and it tends to attack WordPress based sites. And the first clue I got about it was I got a Twitter DM. And those of you who use Twitter a fair amount will probably know that Twitter has sort of two types of direct message that you can receive from other people. You get the direct messages from people you know, which go into a straightforward inbox and you can just reply to them straight away. And then you have a box called message requests. And in Twitter's infinite wisdom, they've decided not to notify you when you have something in your message request box. So it relies on you occasionally clicking into the direct messages screen and seeing if anyone has tried to contact you. And in this case, someone had. And I was immediately suspicious because the person who was trying to contact me was one of those people on Twitter who they hadn't set an avatar for themselves. Their name was just like a random name and then a bunch of numbers after it. And they had no followers, were hardly following anyone else. It was obviously like a throwaway burner account for someone. And they just said, Retrounite's homepage is defaced. Sad smiley face. That's just a sad face, I guess, isn't it? Yeah, so I was immediately a little bit skeptical about this, based on past experiences with such other examples of Twitter users like this. But I had a look anyway, just in case there was something to it. And the first time I looked, there didn't appear to be anything wrong. But as it turned out, my browser had obviously just cached a working version of the site's homepage, so everything looked fine to me. So I forced a reload, and then I saw what the problem was. So the homepage had indeed been completely defaced, with a bunch of spam about Viagra and related drugs and that sort of thing. And this is how these malware attacks, or pharma hacks as they're known, operate. They basically hijack the front page of a website, which is the page that is most likely to be indexed by Google, and they inject their own code in there that forces it to display information and links relating to something that they're trying to sell. So in this case, Viagra, various other related little blue pills and so on. And the way it's supposed to work is that it basically hijacks your search engine optimization and takes it for themselves. So the work we've done on getting Retrounite seen by Google, this is very narrow. Yeah, the work we've done on getting Retrounite visible on Google and getting some of our articles visible on Google, this hack was basically attempting to take the traffic from those clicks on Google and send it to a dodgy website. Eventually Google gets wind of that, and you end up with one of those markers on your Google search results saying this site may be compromised, or one of those big screens that comes up saying do not proceed any further, this site is unsafe. And when that happens, you're in a bit of trouble, because it's very difficult to prove to Google that you've fixed the problem. So fortunately we got on top of the problem before there was any impact to our Google search ratings. But the malware that was causing the problem had sort of buried itself so deep in the site's code that there wasn't really any option other than to basically reboot the whole thing. So we had to... Cat is clawing my chair. We basically had to pretty much format the whole server, wipe it out, reinstall what we had, and try and rebuild it as best we could. So fortunately we had some backups from a few days prior to the problems happening, so we actually didn't lose anything that we posted recently. We lost some of the sort of archived posts from the site's spiritual predecessor. I'm not too worried about those because we're trying to build this into a... Where am I going? Am I supposed to be going right? I am supposed to be going right, excuse me. Yes, so I'm not too concerned about those because we're trying to build Retrounite into a brand new site rather than trying to basically be a successor to that old site. But even so, it's still a bit of a shame to lose some of those older articles. But thankfully, we got all the recent stuff, all the stuff that I've posted in the last couple of weeks since we officially launched Retrounite in place. But we had a suspicion that the malware attack came due to a vulnerability in the theme that we were using. So we've had to replace the theme, so the site looks a little bit different to how you might have seen it if you saw it a few days ago. But they also provided us the opportunity to install a few more useful plugins. So there's some handy plugins that we've made use of to help with layouts and help with security and all manner of other things like that. So hopefully shouldn't happen again. And in some respects it's done us a bit of a favour because it's actually put the site back in a better state than it was from a behind the scenes angle. So I'm fine with it. It's just a bit of a shame that we basically lost out on a week's worth of visitors and opportunity to write stuff. But hopefully going forward, that means that we can just get on with it now and not have to worry about it too much. So fingers crossed on that regard. So on that note, having sort of basically a week off from having to do anything on Retrounite made me have a good think about what we can do with that site, because it's still very new. It's still pretty much just me working on it at the moment. There's another guy who is going to help out when he can, but he has other responsibilities, so I can't necessarily rely on him all the time. Oh dear. Hopefully there's a filling station up ahead. There seems to be one a little bit further along this road, so we should be alright. Yeah, so it's mostly just me and this other guy when he gets time to do stuff. So pretty much like with Rice, I'm in charge of what we're going to do with what is on the site. So far I've just been posting some sort of one-off articles about various games and things that are interesting. Oh, I like these automatic toll gates. Yeah, all about them. Come on, log boy, get ahead. Yeah, so I've been posting some stuff about some individual games. I've been sort of kicking off some, I guess, casual series, you'd call them. Going through the games in the Midway Arcade Treasures compilation, one at a time. And I thought a nice idea would be to work on some sort of regular columns for the week, so people can tune in each week on the website and they can come for a particular type of article that they might be interested in. That's something that I do on Rice Digital alongside, I guess you'd call it a la carte content or something like that if you're an insufferable SEO ponce, but yeah, so regular weekly features, I like those because it helps give the site a bit of personality, and it also means that you don't have to come up with completely original ideas every single day, because you can just look at what you've got scheduled for each day in the week, and then you can do something on that theme. So the ideas that I've come up with so far, I'm going to continue the Midway Arcade Treasures thing. That's obviously not necessarily going to be an ongoing thing because I will run out of games eventually, but there's still a fair few games to cover across those 3 collections. So there's that one. I'm going to do 10 of the best Tuesdays, I called it. So that's basically every Tuesday we pick a subject and then we pick 10 of the best things to do with that subject. So the reason I like that as an idea is that you can be as specific or as broad as you want. So you can be something as broad as 10 of the best ZX Spectrum games, or you could be something as specific as, I don't know, 10 of the best light gun shooters on PlayStation 1 or something like that. Lots of scope to do that. Everyone loves a listicle, and those should be reasonably easy to put together. So alongside that, another idea I had was for a regular column called How to Play. And my thinking behind this actually stems from some of the discussions that have happened in the Evercade community. Because if you're familiar with the Evercade, you'll know that Evercade cartridges come with a bunch of games on them. They come with a manual, but because of the sort of inherent space limitations of the print medium, there's only so much detail that can be put in about each game. And that means that some games that might be a little bit more complex or a little bit difficult to pass to begin with if you've not come across them before, that means that some people can be left a little confused by them. So the idea behind the How to Play series will be, we'll take a game, or maybe multiple games at a time, I haven't decided yet. We'll take a game and we will basically provide some sort of instructional guide on how to play it. So it will tell you the controls. In the case of 2600 games, it will tell you the game variations and what they all offer, all that sort of thing. So it's basically, my thinking behind that is, when people come across retro games these days, they tend to do so in a context that doesn't necessarily have readily accessible instructions. And I don't just mean people who are downloading ROMs for emulation in that case. I also mean in the case of things like the Nintendo Switch Online apps for the NES and the Super NES. None of those come with manuals. And although you get a brief blurb that occasionally has some details about the instructions in there, it's not a substitute for the actual manual or some actual proper guidance on how to play the game properly. And so my thinking behind How to Play is to just pick some games that are in some way relevant, and we'll focus on maybe one at a time, maybe a couple at a time, as I say, depending on how much space it takes up, and we'll talk about how to play them. Not necessarily how to win at them, so I'm not going to do a walkthrough or anything, but I am going to tell you how to play the game. And I think this is going to be especially helpful around the time that things like the Codemasters collection for Evercade comes out, because the Codemasters collection, it includes some simple NES games that are pretty easy to play, but it also includes stuff like Megalomania, which is, I don't know if I call it complex, but if you haven't played it before, it can be tricky to get your head around, particularly because it uses a very 90s icon-based interface. And if you're not ready for what it is, for what it throws at you, you might find yourself a little bit confused. The original version of Megalomania came with a big manual that sort of walked you through the first stages of the game and explained how to play it and what all the icons do and that sort of thing. And so I think an article that people can refer to called just How to Play Megalomania will be helpful for some people. And there's also scope in that column to look at unusual and interesting games as well, like Chris Crawford's Gossip for Atari 8-bit is a good example. Now that is a game that doesn't really have much in the way of documentation because its release status is so unclear. No one seems to quite know whether it actually ever got a commercial release or not. There is some information out there for it, but unless you specifically go looking for it and know what you're looking for, chances are you'll boot that game up, have no idea what is going on, and maybe put it aside and think, oh, well, that's stupid. Whereas if you've got a readily accessible article explaining how that game works, what you're supposed to be doing, what the aim of the game is, then it might encourage people to try some more adventurous stuff in the retro sector. Because like your average shoot 'em up, your average platform game, that sort of thing, most people can get a grasp on those pretty quickly as soon as they figure out the controls. But there's still plenty of retro games out there that are either very ambitious or they have more complex controls than you might expect. This is especially true for retro computer games. This is especially true for retro computer games on things like the Commodore 64, the Spectrum, the Atari and so on. But in some cases it's true for console games as well, things like Megalomania. And so I like that idea. I'm quite excited about working on that idea, because there's a lot of games out there that I think would benefit from this treatment. So that's 2 ideas. Well, 3 if you count the Midway Arcade Treasures one. The last one I had was just a column simply called Late to the Party, and the idea behind that would be take a game that has been out for a long time, like a couple of console generations or more, and explore it for the first time from a modern perspective. Is it worth playing today? Is its historical perspective does its historical perspective make it worth having a look at, despite what might be seen as shortcomings from a modern player's perspective? And I think that's a potentially interesting topic of discussion, because there are lots of games that are historically significant for one reason or another, but which are quite difficult to play today. Either because their mechanics aren't up to modern standards, or things have moved on, or all sorts of things. Like a good example is something like Jet Set Willy. Jet Set Willy is a massively influential game. You're going to just come past me, please. Jet Set Willy is a massively influential game on the development of the platform game genre, and particularly on the sort of open structure, side-scrolling, exploratory style platformer. Completely independent of stuff like Castlevania and Metroid. And so historically it's significant, but there are so many aspects of that game's design that drive me absolutely bonkers that I find it so hard to engage with today. So stuff like that, I think it's worth exploring some games, bearing in mind their historical worth, and trying to determine if they still, I don't know if have a place is the right word, but whether they're worth experiencing firsthand, or if just reading about them is worthwhile. So I think that might be quite interesting. Again, there's lots of scope in that. So I could, excuse me, I could potentially look back at some classic games on old home computers, but equally I could look back at some stuff that came out on Xbox 360 that I missed first time around, stuff like The Darkness, which I know was good, but I've never played. And the question is it still good? So I think that's going to be quite interesting. So those are the main ideas that I've done so far, and then alongside that there will be sort of more time-limited features, I guess you'd call them, like the Midway Arcade Treasures one, because that one will no longer be directly relevant to what I'm doing once I've covered all the games. It will remain relevant on the site, but it's not something I'll be posting every week once I've covered all the games. Likewise, while the Olympics are still happening, I'm quite keen to cover some more Olympic games, because I've enjoyed writing about Summer Games and Summer Games 2 so far, but I'm also quite interested in writing about some other Olympic games that I maybe haven't tried before. You may have seen last week on Retro Select I played the Beijing 2008 game and came away very impressed with it. So I'm sure there's some other official Olympic game experiences that I've not had yet that are worth having.
右車線です。
Oh, time to move over. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, on that note, that just brings another worthwhile thing to mind, which is I think you're going to laugh at me for this, but I think sports games are worth exploring. If there's one thing that Atari A to Z Flashback has taught me, it's that sports games can actually be surprisingly interesting. And I've mentioned this concept several times on videos where I've explored sports games. But the idea of a sports game being a fun video game first and a accurate sports simulation second makes for some really fascinating games. And I think in more recent years, developers have sort of drifted away from that somewhat. So like all the current big sports franchises like FIFA and NBA 2K, whatever, a lot of them are going for a combination of excessive realism plus being a platform for microtransactions, which kind of sucks, which kind of puts me off ever exploring modern sports games. But there are lots of older sports games that I think are still worth looking at. And it's also interesting to look at them from the perspective of someone who isn't particularly interested in sports but enjoys fun video games. So, like I say, on the Atari A to Z Flashback series, I've covered quite a few games that are adaptations of sports that I don't like football, but I've come away enjoying the video game. Stuff like Real Sports Soccer and the Atari 2600. It's a fantastic multiplayer game. Absolutely fantastic multiplayer game. Because it barely resembles football. So yeah, I think there's scope for that as well. So that's the plan. I will start implementing that in the coming week. Got lots of stuff to cover for Rice Digital as well, but I'm going to have to sort of divvy my time up between Rice Digital and Retrounite, particularly while we're sort of building up Retrounite and trying to get Rice into a nice, consistent position. Rice is in a pretty nice, consistent position in terms of daily traffic at the moment. I'd like to improve it, but that's going to be a slow and gradual process. And so while the ship is sort of stable, as it were, that's the time to get a bit experimental with the other projects. So that is the plan. How far have we got to go? 310 miles. Still a fair ways to go then. So what else can we talk about? How about we talk about VTubers? Now I know me and Chris want to do a podcast episode on this at some point, but at the moment I don't know when that's going to be. We will figure it out as soon as we can. But between sort of us both being very busy, I've not been that well after having the second COVID vaccine this week. I've sort of been knocked about a bit by the side effects, but I think I'm over the worst now. So a bit between all those things and wanting to get lots of things done, we've not been able to get together again just yet. But it will happen. It will happen. And we will have a discussion on VTubers. But that, in the meantime, that's nothing stopping me talking about VTubers in here either. Now, I imagine most of you watching this are familiar with VTubers for one reason or another. On the off chance that you aren't, VTubers are short for virtual YouTubers, and they are usually streamers these days. Not exclusively streamers, but usually live streamers who, instead of showing their real face, they have a animated avatar. It's usually anime in style because the whole sort of phenomenon started in Asia. Actually, it didn't, but it was popularized in Asia. Let's put it back way. The actual phenomenon started with a Japanese girl living in London, but that's a story for another day. Anyway,
右車線です。その後、右車線です。
Anyway, VTubers have absolutely exploded in popularity over the course of the pandemic. I don't think it was necessarily entirely because of the pandemic, because they were already doing pretty well before the pandemic happened. Oh god, where am I going? Where am I going? Help. Around here. Around here? No. No, this is incorrect. Sorry. My bad. Oh, now I need to go to bed as well. Sorry, I will continue my story in just a moment. I just need to figure out my navigation. Yes, so VTubers are YouTubers and or Twitch streamers who make use of animated avatars rather than showing their real face. More often than not, they play a character of some description, and that character has lore and background and so on. But the interesting thing is that 9 times out of 10, probably even more than that, most of the time,
右車線です。その後、右の出口です。
when a VTuber performs, it is kind of a combination of this character that they're playing and their real personality and their real sort of values and ideologies and that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting blend of things. And it's also very interesting because a lot of people who are involved with it use it as a means of overcoming certain forms of anxiety. And so the obvious one is if you don't want to show your face on the internet for one reason or another, if you do it behind an avatar, perhaps with a voice changer, perhaps not, but if you do it behind an avatar, then you're not really showing yourself. You can sort of put on that face, put on that mask, and pretend you're someone else, which is really helpful for some people. Now, like I say, a lot of VTubers often end up in a situation where they end up talking about themselves because they find that the security of being able to talk as their avatar rather than as quote-unquote themselves, it makes them feel much more comfortable talking about things that they might otherwise have a bit of difficulty doing. So a good example is the VTuber Nyanas, who is part of the agency called VShoujo. Nyanas is one of my all-time favourite VTubers, and she's seen lots of success over the course of the last year or so. She's over 1 million subscribers on YouTube now, and she's collaborated with Kizuna Ai, and she's sort of appeared live on stage with Kizuna Ai. She's got a single out, all sorts of cool things going on. But what's interesting about Nyanas is that she talks fairly openly about her own sense of social anxiety and worrying about performing in front of people, and particularly her anxiety over practicing her singing in front of people. So I believe she lives with her parents, or she lives with someone anyway. I think it might be her parents, but she's talked on several occasions about how she finds it difficult to practice her singing when there are people in the house. And that's something I can very much relate to, because I feel exactly the same way about practicing my music. Like, if there are other people in the house, I find it very difficult to sit down and practice the piano, for example, because it's not necessarily that I'm worried about doing something wrong. It's more that I'm worried about annoying people, if that makes sense. There are no rest stops on this road. Seem to have gone past a petrol station and anyway, yes. So yeah, I worry about annoying people by sort of practicing the same bit over and over again, because I kind of annoy myself a little bit when I have to do that. But yeah, so Nyanis has talked about that sort of thing, and I found it quite relatable, is the key part of that story. And so what has she done with her streams? Every stream now, she starts with a short karaoke session. Every stream she does now, she starts by singing a song. And she makes that more bearable for herself by making a bit of a joke of it. So sometimes she takes it very seriously. Sometimes she deliberately sings over the top and loud. Sometimes she decides to fake cry through it, like she's pretending to be a drunk girl at a karaoke night. And her audience loves it. They absolutely love it because it's fun. It's enjoyable. She's a good singer. She's a good singer, and she has a good sense of humour and personality that really helps that little sequence in all of her streams work. But she still talks about the anxiety she feels. She still talks about the anxiety she feels when she's performing, and when she has to talk to people, when she has collaborations with other people and that sort of thing. And I respect that. I respect how honestly she can talk about those things. And I think a big part of why she can talk so honestly about those things is because she is doing so as a VTuber. And that, I think, is an important part of the whole thing. Because a lot of people are watching these performers, and they are... I think the fashionable term for it is parasocial relationships. They're forming parasocial relationships with these people, which means that you're sort of getting the kind of social nutrition, I guess you'd call it, from a relationship that isn't quote unquote real. Oh, I'm getting fined for not sleeping now. Come on, there's got to be somewhere to sleep. Yeah, so you watch a Nana stream and you feel like you're hanging out with her, but you also know that she's not a personal friend of yours. She's not your friend. But yeah, you get some of that sort of social nutrition from spending time with these performers. And that's been especially important over the course of the pandemic, while people haven't been able to go out, while people haven't been able to see friends and family, while people haven't been able to travel. Because there's now such a wide variety of these VTubers that people can tune into. It's it's really working for people. It's a really interesting phenomenon, I think. It's one that could probably do with some study to determine the impact on certain things, because there are areas of it that could cause concern, such as the amount of money that people fling around. Like, it's not at all unusual to see a popular VTuber streaming and you see people throwing huge amounts of money at them through donations, through YouTube super chats, through subscriptions, through all that sort of thing. And you're not imagining that, by the way. The screen is going dark. It's because I'm tired, but there's nowhere to stop. Yeah. So I think the whole phenomenon could probably benefit from some sort of studies being done into exactly what these people are thinking when they think, right, yeah, I'll hand over my credit card details and send $100 to this person that I've never met. I mean, in some respects, you can look at it in just the same way as buying merchandise for a favourite band or something like that. Except, in the case of a VTuber, you don't get anything for this. I mean, yes, you can buy merchandise and stuff for them, but if you send someone a YouTube super chat, the most you will get is your message being read. And I think that's the slightly dangerous part of the whole parasocial relationship thing, because some people will look on that option of paying money to get their message read as a means of what they see as making a new friend, when in fact you chuck $100 at a VTuber and they're going to say thank you, yes, and they're going to look fondly upon you, especially if you do it frequently, but doesn't make you their friend. Doesn't make you their friend. And so that's the side of things that sort of needs watching, I think. Because there's no real sort of regulation or anything on there, and I'm not necessarily saying that there needs to be regulation or anything on it, but yeah, there is the potential for people who are I guess vulnerable is the right word, vulnerable when it comes to managing their money. That could potentially get them in a bit of trouble if they're not careful. But yeah, on the whole, it's a good thing. I've had lots of great entertainment from a wide variety of VTubers ever since I started actively watching them with the arrival of Hololive English last September. I'm very, very fond of Nijisanji English's two groups. There's Lazulite, which is their first group, who debuted, I guess, probably a couple of months ago now. And then more recently, their second group, Obsidia, has debuted as well. And all 6 of those girls are just fantastic performers. And they're great because they're all different. They're all very different from one another. They can work together and they bounce off each other really nicely when they do collaborative stuff together, but they also provide their own unique form of entertainment when they're performing solo as well. So depending on whatever you're in the mood for, you can find something that will fit that mood. So if you're in the mood for kind of soft and gentle, you can go and watch Petra Gurin from Obsidia. If you're in the mood for the most infectious laugh in the world and some cheeky, mischievous humour, you go and watch Seilen Tatsuki. If you want a lewd fish, you go and watch Finana Ryugu. And one of the things I particularly like about those girls specifically, although Hololive does this to quite a strong extent as well, is that they often deliberately subvert the initial expectations set by things like their character design and their initial reveal and so on. And Finana is a good example of that, because Finana was sort of introduced as this very nice, softly spoken. She's a mermaid and very sweet and kind and gentle. And she reminded everyone of Ina from Hololive with her gentle laugh and so on. But it became clear. Oh no! Wake up! God. Okay, we really need to find somewhere to sleep. That was scary. I've not had that happen before. Yeah, no, the cool thing about Finana is that not long after her debut, she revealed herself to be a complete pervert, and everyone loved her for it. So she was sort of being very open about the hentai tags that she's interested in. Her gen mates are always picking on her for liking lewd tweets on Twitter, including not safe for work artwork of herself. And it's just a delight, because the appeal there is not the porn side of things. The appeal there is that she... Stop it. Oh dear. Sorry. Yeah, the appeal... I'm just here talking about VTubers falling asleep at the wheel of my truck. Yeah, so the appeal of all that is the honesty, and the fact that people will find that relatable. They are happy to have someone that openly talks about things that they might be interested in, but maybe feel like that they don't have a suitable outlet to talk about. You know what, I'm going to pull off here, see if I can't find a place to rest.
新しいルートを検索します。左方向です。
Because it's starting to get a bit dangerous now. Yeah, there we go. Stop. Oh, God damn it. be somewhere to rest in this little town over here, surely. But yeah, that sort of the whole sort of honesty side of things is one thing that people really like about VTubers, which is interesting because when you think about it, it's a sort of fundamentally dishonest kind of thing to do, because they are deliberately obscuring their real identity in order to be entertaining, which makes it all the more fascinating that they feel more able to talk about certain things. Anyway, I think I see somewhere to rest just up ahead. How long have we got left on the delivery? We're another 17 hours before we need to get a stop. Another 17 hours before we need to arrive, so I think we can probably take a little break. In what appears to be a large expanse of nothingness.
ロータリー4番目の出口です。出口です。
Oh, sweet. The sweet release of sleep. How much time left? Still 8 hours to go, and we're not far off where we need to be, so alright. Have a nice little bit of night driving to enjoy for the last leg of the journey. We're not even that far away from our destination, is the silly thing. But if I was going to keep dozing off, I thought it probably better to actually get some proper sleep before we had a nasty accident. Oh dear, what has happened there? A lamppost has happened there. There's what has happened there. Back up. It's fine. You just... whatever. Oh no. I'm stuck, Mildred. Alright, well, let's go this way. Let's go this way, and we'll go round the roundabout. The boring way. Sorry. Sorry, my bad. You shouldn't park on the side of the road if you don't want to be hit by a lorry. Right, not that way. This way. Right. 72 miles to go, 1 hour 44 minutes. Everything's fine. Truck is in remarkably good condition considering the number of times it's run into a wall while I've been asleep, but anyway, we had a nice conversation about VTubers, which is nice. And like I say, I know that Chris and I both want to talk about that a bit more on an episode of the Moe Gamer podcast at some point. So that is going to happen sometime. I don't know if it's going to be on the next episode or some other time, but it's, like I say, it's definitely something we want to do because there's lots to talk about, and we've both become very big fans of VTubers as a form of creative expression and as a entertainment medium, I guess you'd call it. Because although it does have a lot in common with streaming, YouTubing, that sort of thing, it is very much its own distinct thing. There is its own skill set and its own considerations and its own sort of specialist things going on. And that's what makes it interesting to me. That's why I like talking about it. It's why I like writing about it on Rice Digital. and so on. Anyway, turn left for Portugal.
左車線です。
Oh, there's a bloody rest stop just there as well. Never mind. We had a little adventure, didn't we? Right, 67 miles shouldn't take too far to go because, as I've mentioned before, both the time and the distance in this are compressed considerably. It shouldn't take too long to get where we're going now. Heading for Lisbon from the look of things. Surprisingly busy for 4 o'clock in the morning. Everyone thought, oh, I'll start early, then I won't run into any sleep-deprived truckers. Crossing the border. We're in Portugal. But yeah, with regard to VTubers, I won't lie, I've considered looking into it myself. I enjoy doing stuff on video, and I found myself enjoying doing stuff on video a lot more than I ever thought I would when I started doing it. I started doing it just as a sort of experiment, and those of you who watched my first experimental video will recall that I used to do it just as sound only with no face cam. And oh, I've gone in the wrong lane. Yeah, it was actually my wife who encouraged me to actually appear on camera, because she sort of looked into things. She watches a fair amount of YouTube, not necessarily gaming stuff, but all sorts of YouTube. Ouch! Oh dear. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's fine. Everything's going to be fine. What am I stuck on? I think my trailer's stuck on something, isn't it? There we go. Oh no. We're so close. We're so close to our destination. Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, I've sort of been enjoying YouTubing a lot more than I ever thought I would. And even sort of putting myself out there and putting my face online, which is one thing that I was very anxious about. Oh no, this is a disaster. I don't want to have to call the recovery people. I refuse to call the recovery people. I'm not stuck on anything. Why can't I move? These stupid narrow lanes. I'm gonna have to that's what I'm stuck on. That's what I'm stuck on. Alright, apologies for the break in realism for a moment. Yes, I know. Right, straighten up. That's not straightening up. Alright, wiggle over this way just a little bit. And wiggle forwards this way. And this way. That's it. In we go. I think we're going to make it, boys and girls. There we go. Whew, that was a little adventure, wasn't it? Yes. Anyway, my point was, I've enjoyed doing video a lot more than I thought I would. There's still things I'm self-conscious about, but that's mostly sort of insecurities about myself rather than about necessarily just doing stuff on video. At the same time, I'm interested in exploring the idea of VTubing for myself, but at the same time I'm also aware that I've established myself as sort of a quote-unquote real person at this point. So I find myself wondering that if I were suddenly to switch over to doing something else, then that might seem a bit jarring and it might drive some people away, but it might also bring some new people in as well. I don't know. It's always hard to know what the best thing is. I do think there is scope for a retro gaming centric VTuber, because there isn't really one at the moment. There's Inugami Korone from Hololive, who often plays stuff like Mega Man and Sonic the Hedgehog and R-Type and that sort of thing. But that's not necessarily her specialism, it's just something she does every so often, and it's always a big deal when she does. Seilen Tatsuki, who I mentioned earlier, is looking promising, because one of the things that she talked about in her debut is the fact that she grew up gaming with stuff that her dad introduced to her. And already she's done a stream of Onimusha Warlords, which is a game that she had fond memories of playing with her dad when she was younger. And so there's some scope there for her to do some retro gaming stuff. But she also really likes Apex Legends, so there's going to be plenty of Apex Legends on her channel as well. I don't know. I just think it would be interesting to have the crossover between those audiences, because I mean, there must be some crossover between those audiences, because I mean, I am living proof of that. I like retro games, I like VTubers, so why isn't there someone who caters specifically to me, damn it? And that someone who caters specifically to me could well be me, but, you know, it's these idle thoughts you have at stupid o'clock in the morning. And then you remember how much money it costs to commission someone not only to design your VTuber avatar, but also to rig it with Live 2D. And you think, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all. Oh god, more toll gates. Right, let's make sure we go through the right one this time. Which one am I supposed to go through? Not that left one, I think that looks like some sort of pass. I guess this middle one? But yeah, lots of things to think about. And we are nearly at our destination at last, after some peculiar adventures along the way that threatened the very comfiness of this stream. I must it's not a stream, is it? It's a video. You know what I mean. Obrigado. Boa viagem. Apologies to any Portuguese people watching. Portugal seems nice, doesn't it? Lots of trees, green fields, sunshine. I like this game when you get onto these side roads, because the scenery is much more interesting than when you're on the freeways. fact, I believe there's a setting you can put in the options that says you prefer smaller roads, so you can actually get it to take you longer routes that are more interesting to look at. I might have to turn that on. Evora. I don't know how you pronounce that. I don't know Portugal at all. Where are we going? Turn right.
出口です。
I don't know. Spain and Portugal are countries that I sort of have this skewed idea of because I've never been to them. I sort of end up with this sort of mental picture of them that is nothing to do with how they actually are. So, like, to me, everywhere in Spain is a seaside town with white stone walls and that sort of thing. Everywhere in Spain is like that in my mind. Portugal, I don't really know. Portugal is not a country I think about a great deal. I certainly don't think of industrial zones, but, you know, here they are. Looking much as they always do, but with more palm trees, apparently. And a bit more dust. There used to be a lot of dust in Portugal. Where are we going? In here.
その後、右方向です。 右方向です。
By the way, if you're wondering why my sat-nav is in Japanese, I deliberately put it in there just to see if I could pick up any Japanese from it. I think I'm picking up a few bits and pieces. I don't know how useful it will be, but... Thanks, lady. That was good work. Oh no, my trailer's stuck on the bloody gate. Back up, back up. Back the fuck up. Ugh. Right. Where do you want it? You gotta be kidding me. I'm not putting it there. I'll put it over there for you. No! Why are your gates so narrow? So impractical. Anyway. Right, this should be straightforward enough. Just straighten up. Which it should do naturally as we pull forwards. Alright. Mission complete. There's your large tubes. I have 25,000 euros, please. Thank you very much. Right. Just before we wrap up for today, I'm just going to find a place to repair the damage to my truck and get some sleep again. Because we have now learned the value of sleep while being a trucker. I didn't realise it went that far. I've never let myself get that tired in this game before. I didn't realise it went so far as to completely take control away from you for several seconds. That is quite terrifying. But anyway, where are we going? Off to the left at the end of this road from the look of things. Find the pothole. Over here, I think. We're pulling in here? No, next turning. No, we are going here. Alright, my bad. Looks like it got pretty hot out there, sir. £5 to repair. Serves me right. Serves me right. Anyway, there should be a place to nap over here. There we go. So they won't mind me napping in their car park. Engine off. And sleep. Right, we are done. That is that. So thanks for coming with me on this little adventure to Portugal, even with all the the mishaps along the way. But they make things just a little bit more interesting, don't they? Anyway, we're here safe and sound now, and that means it's time for me to say goodbye. So I'll just say, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.